Welcome to another important episode of Brighteon Conversations. This is Mike Adams, the founder of Brighteon.com. And today we're joined by, I think, one of the most important voices in pioneering science, especially for our time when we're facing this global pandemic of a bioengineered weapon called the Wuhan coronavirus. This man has a solution that might be able to start saving lives right now. It's backed by some early clinical trials in Ecuador that are rather astounding. The science behind this is very clear. This should be studied, and yet it is perhaps the most censored natural medicine on the planet. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to share articles about this substance, which we'll talk about. And you're certainly not allowed to praise this guest who joins us now, Andreas Kalker. Andreas, it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm a fan of your pioneering work and your curiosity about the way the world works. I've got some tough questions for you today, but I want to introduce you to our audience, so thank you for joining me today. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you very much, Mike. The honor is mine, because to be in your show is really a great deal for me. I'm a simple biophysicist that is here in this lab somehow finding out some interesting stuff, and it has been 13 years ongoing work. And actually, yes, it's true, we found a solution for COVID-19.
Well, let's start with that. Let's go ahead and just say chlorine dioxide, which is apparently the phrase, the chemical equation that cannot be uttered in our world today. You're not allowed to say it. But let's start with just some basics. Tell us first, what is chlorine dioxide? And in that answer, explain why it's not sodium hypochlorite, by the way, which is why they have different names.
So chlorine dioxide is a very old stuff. It was invented in the 1800s, and you can make it in different ways. You can make it with, because it is sodium chloride, and you can activate it with any other acid. So you can use even sulfuric acid, but then it's toxic. You can use many things, and the basic known or the most used one is when you have two substances. So you have substance, the sodium chloride in this case, and you have an activator. In this case is HCl, or basically it's very similar to stomach acid at 4%. And what happens if you put these two liquids together? They make a chemical reaction, and this chemical reaction liberates a gas, and this gas is actually the active pharmaceutical ingredient. It is not the two liquids, it's the gas. So what happens is it was invented, or it was, let's say, not invented, really, it was published by Jim Humble at the time as MMS, because he found out in the jungle of Guyana that it works against malaria. And he's right, it works against malaria. And from this point on, there were many other surprises, and these surprises said, okay, it's working. The main disadvantage is it might, it doesn't have always, but it might have, so especially in the first phases when we used not hydrochloric acid, we used citric acid, then it could make a diarrhea, and the taste is quite bad, actually. So a farmer came to me and said, hey, I would like to do it in my cattle, because cattle cannot take it, that's a diarrhea. So what we sorted out is to create the active ingredient. So we came from the basic of the grandfather, let's say, the MMS or the mix version. We went to the gas version. The gas version is basically nothing but the gas that is freed in water. They're very easy to do, it's on the videos. So what's the main difference between these two? First of all, if you have sodium chloride, you have an ongoing reaction. You have some free chlorine, you have many other things that are going on. That is a constant reaction, which actually can create light, it's not severe, side effects. And the fact is the chlorine dioxide is freed as a gas, and it works. So the better way, or let's say the most advanced way, is if you use the gas, because the gas is absorbed in the stomach. It doesn't go to the intestine because it's completely absorbed and goes directly in the bloodstream, and it has pH neutral, because if you have the mix, the pH is acid, and here you have a pH neutral solution. The pH neutral solution makes it even possible to get it intravenously, things what you cannot do with the old stuff. So we have to see that even if the name is the same, the substance is not the same. You have a different ingredient. When we come now to the
interrupt
bleach,
you there?
this is a different stuff.
Okay, just a couple of clarification questions. Sorry, the substance that you're talking about, chlorine dioxide, when you point to your right hand, you're talking about it's derived from gas.
This is, for example, just for if I can make it closer here, you can see a glass inside. This is a simple way to make it yourself. So in the glass you put the MMS, and outside is just water. So in the beginning it is something like that, you know. So for example, if we have this here. So we put the chlorine dioxide inside, and the gas that's coming out is saturating the water. It's a saturation process.
Ah, I see. Okay, so you are in effect pushing the partial pressure of the gas into soluble form in the water.
So the gas first evaporates because of the temperature, but it's more heavy than air, and then it goes down, and it is very, very, very good hydrosoluble. It does not hydrolyze, so it does not make OH in this process that would be reactive. No, it doesn't. So actually it structures water. This is a very interesting point we found out. It structures water and even it structures blood, but this is more complex.
So as it's still it's a chloride atom and two oxygen atoms.
Exactly.
That's still the molecule, correct?
This is a big difference because it's a chlorine, it's an atom, it's an ion actually, it's a chloride ion. This chloride ion has a force, electrical force, but it's not chlorine. Chlorine is Cl2. That is like, let me tell it non-professionally. It is an oxidized salt. That's what it is. You know, it's an oxidized salt technically in a way.
Okay, now people immediately leap to this incorrect conclusion that any form of a chlorine atom is toxic to ingest. However, they eat salt, and so that's sodium chloride. And when you eat salt, the sodium and the chloride immediately dissociate in your stomach acid, for example, and you end up with ions there as well. So, could you speak to that for a moment? Because some people don't understand that salt also uses chlorine atoms.
Yes, it's actually essential for life. It's one of the most parts we have in our body. We have all the body fluids, our tears, our blood, our semen, our mucus, everything is salty in a way, or has more or less salt. And salt is the basic conductor of our system. So the conductivity is, we don't have cables inside our body. Actually, our technical, from the standpoint of biophysics, not biochemists, the conductivity is based on the, let's say, the salt. I try to make it simple here, okay? It's more complex, but the salt is essential for our body. If you don't have enough salt, we have a big problem.
Well, and people are familiar with the term electrolytes, and they understand that electrolytes are critical. So there are what? Sodium electrolytes, potassium, chlorine electrolytes.
Chlorine electrolytes, yeah.
Right. I think maybe one other prominent type of electrolytes, but that's essentially what you're talking about, correct?
Correct. So this is very interesting because in the process, people sometimes are asking how much salt is there in, and so we have the gas analytics, and it's really nearly nothing. So because in the process it's really very, very low, and what is really high is the oxygen potential it has. And so the oxygen potential in the gas analytics of the blood have been shown to be able to be till 50% more, and this is where in the end I got some pharmaceutical patents on. In that way, I have 3 patents now. The 4th is in the line, in the pipeline. So basically, what it does is increases the oxygen directly in the blood, and at the same time, the chlorine ion is oxidizing too, because as well as an oxidizer. So we have the oxygen and we have the chlorine, and the chlorine ion has a higher force because the force of the chlorine is 1.36 volt. So it's the first. The stronger is the first one, and if the interesting thing, it behaves exactly like our blood. Our blood absorbs oxygen and in the lung, and then travels through the body and releases the oxygen, whereas acidity. So acidity is it's called the Bohr effect. So the blood releases intelligent, the acidity, because, for example, if we have an inflammation, histamine, it releases there. Or in other places when you make sport or you have a lactic acid. And so the lactic acid, where there's more lactic acid, more oxygen is released. The interesting thing is if you have chlorine dioxide, it is a secondary oxygen carrier that does not need blood because the salt ion, that's the chlorine ion, is holding it till it comes to the point where the acidity is, for whatever reason. Could be bacteria, virus, fungus, whatever. And then it goes off. First the chlorine ion, always the ion, the chlorine ion, and then depending on the situation, if there's a lot, the oxygen is oxidizing too, or the oxygen, if there is in neighborhood of blood, for example, the blood cells absorb them like a sponge, the same mechanism that we have in our lung. It's exactly the same mechanism. And I was able to make a video on that I published a short time ago in the microscope, on the phase contrast microscope, where you can see, especially it's extremely fast. It's real time. It's not real. It's really real time. So you can see the chlorine goes in and chlorine dioxide, and the cells become alive again, because this is the blood was totally clotted, exactly, well, basically like the blood of the COVID patients, exactly the same. And as we knew that, we said, hey, that should work on COVID, and we started to spread this information. And in Ecuador, there was the first in using it.
Okay, wow, this I've got so many questions for you on this, on just the biochemistry here. So how early, I mean, we're talking about a totally different vector, not a pulmonary vector for transferring oxygen to the blood, but now a digestive vector. And I would imagine that this effect of chlorine dioxide going into the blood probably begins in the mouth, right? It begins early. But where exactly is this transfer taking place throughout digestion? I mean, how quickly does this get pushed into blood?
We measured it after 1 minute.
Wow. After 1 minute of just swallowing it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my next question, I would imagine then the minute the chlorine ion is stripped away, then the oxygens would immediately be looking for something to oxidize.
Exactly, it's O2, but depending on the charges, because if you have a blood, this is, for example, an Fe3, so it's a proton-rich blood. So this proton-rich blood is absorbing and converting it in Fe2. That is oxygen-rich blood. It's basically the same technical process like in the lung.
So even if someone has suppressed lung function and a lack of efficiency in the transfer of oxygen from lung capillaries to the hemoglobin molecule on red blood cells, then this alternate route could saturate the blood with oxygen that would essentially leap onto hemoglobin even outside the pulmonary ecosystem, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely correct, and totally the right way, but it has many different ways. So we have many EPOC, before we had other problems, EPOC patients and whatever, lung problem patients. So you have to understand it like a chemical ventilator. And it has to be used as that. It doesn't make sense to take a big amount in one moment. No, you have to use it. This is an inconvenience. You have to use it all the day through, like a breathing apparatus that it gives you constantly the oxygen, because it gets used up very fast too. So after 2 hours, there's nothing left.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. Once it's in your blood, then just breathing obviously is going to use that up. Your cellular respiration is going to use it up very quickly. Okay, here's the next question. Is there a risk, though, that the chlorine ions or the O2 could, in effect, attack healthy cells rather than pathogens? Is that a risk?
We have been measuring it right now. We are measuring it right now, actually, in the University of Bern with the professor of microbiology, and they are very high skilled, obviously, in Switzerland. And I'm not the specialist for that. And the first index with very, very sensitive skin cells shown that they were living longer. Actually, it's coincidence with everything what we saw. We saw it in 13 years. So I've been taking chlorine dioxide in every imaginable way, intravenously, everything you can imagine. I
Yeah.
can tell you I'm in a better shape than 10 years or 15 years before, definitely.
Do you feel a rush of oxygen after consuming it? I mean, do you have better clarity of brain function, for example, or anything
Yes, in
else?
the beginning, especially in the beginning. I remember the first time when I had arthritis, because I had a severe arthritis. My hands were like that. I couldn't move anything, and I was quite frustrated about that. Couldn't even lift a pen. So when I tested it the first time, well, I have to say I tested it on the dog first, but the dog was running later in the garden. So I tried it myself because you don't believe it easily as a scientist. You say, hey, this is quack, this is snake oil. It's normal. And you test it, and then the first sensation was like a curtain, like clearing up the brain, and it goes more and more and more. I can tell you after 13 years taking it, I could really say that my brain functionality is around 15% or more better, faster.
Well, that's
It goes really
extraordinary.
fast.
Maybe that explains why you speak 4 languages fluently.
I try my best.
Well, I'm very impressed with your Spanish, by the way. I heard one of your interviews on a Spanish language TV station. And I used to live in Ecuador. In fact, I want to ask you about Ecuador. And so at one time I spoke it quite well, maybe not as well today, but I was really impressed with your Espanol there. And your English obviously is quite amazing.
I'm sorry, I'm not a native speaker, so my accent is not the right one, and I will try to improve it.
No, it's very good. And again, I thank you for your time here. Okay, another question for you, and I truly don't know the answer to this, but I just want to have full transparency with the audience. How do you transfer this know-how to other people? Do you share how to make it? Do you produce it commercially or not? Do you produce it for nonprofit use, or what? Explain to
First
people
of all,
your role.
I don't sell any substance because this would be illegal. I know that from the beginning. They tried to sue me, I don't know how many ways. I won every single lawsuit against me because I don't sell the substance. It's not my interest. My interest is in the knowledge. I'm very happy when nature makes you the gift of showing one of these little secrets, So I'm happy here as a lab rat, and I like to experiment. This is my life. So my life, I'm happy with finding out things or finding solution for problem. And there's nothing more beautiful than when you can help somebody. And this is basically my motivation, because actually I don't want to be the richest of the graveyard. For what?
Right. I share your thoughts on that as well. It's pointless, but if you're able to say, how do you fund your laboratory? How do you keep this work going?
Actually, there is an association I'm working with, and the association is paying. I'm an employee of the association, biophysical association, and I'm working on frequencies. So I'm a very bad chemist, I have to admit that, but my specialty is on frequency devices for healing, and there I'm much better.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that area of research. So is that, maybe our readers are familiar, for example, with the old Rife machines. Is it something like that?
We had the basic. We are based on Rife technology, and we brought it much further.
I see.
The Rife machine in the beginning works, but it was analogic. So we have a part that is analog, like the valve and everything, and then we have a digital part. And in the 80s, I was a recording engineer. So as a recording engineer, and before I was even a piano tuner. So frequency is my main world. I've been recording with, I don't know, from Montserrat Caballé. She was an opera singer, or
Wow.
I've been with many things doing that. And she was able actually to break a glass by singing.
Wow.
And she was quite famous at that time. And so we made the recordings, and I start to understand in a very different way how frequencies work on the body. In that, not the pure mathematical way, what most people are doing. I understand that every blockage in the body is an emotional blockage. You cannot create a blockage in the body by rationality, no way. So what is emotion? So as a recording engineer, you know very well what is emotion, because you put the music underneath, and when the violins are going and the tears are dropping, or or the motions going on. So I go from this part. You really come from a very, very different part, because you say, wait a moment. If we have, for example, a cancer is not just a chemical question. It starts somewhere here. So we have hormone, we have many other things. And when I say, okay, I can give to the cancer cells, I can give the oxygen, I can repair everything. But if I don't go for the cause, that's actually the trauma that basically nearly everybody had. So if you don't go for the trauma, you cannot unblock what is blocked constantly. The most common case of cancer is family, actually. Somebody of the family that makes your life impossible, or of your environment. And so these traumas are very important. They are emotional traumas, and with the frequencies, I'm able to create coherence. And the coherence is the key, together with the energy of the chlorine dioxide.
Well, we have a lot to talk about. I can't wait to interview you more on these subjects.
Actually, I'm very into that, and because it's a combination of things. I think integrative medicine is the real one. Everybody puts a little piece, and then we come to the truth.
Well, and there's this reductionism approach, this mechanistic approach in Western medicine, where everything is mechanical, and they just want to be, the doctors want to be better and better mechanics. Genetically engineered mechanics in the current mRNA vaccines, for example. But you're right, there's more to it than just the mechanics. And just as a side note, I don't mean to get distracted here, but you'll find this fascinating. When we were working on our glyphosate quantitation method in our lab using triple quad mass spectrometry, and it took us quite a long time, maybe almost 2 years, to finally nail down a method for quantitating glyphosate below parts per billion concentrations. And it's a very tricky molecule, this glyphosate. Very tricky, very small and very resilient. As part of our fun in the lab, we tried to come up with a way to destroy glyphosate in solution. We tried everything. We tried microwaving it. We tried boiling it. We tried, we haven't tried that yet. But I mean, we tried all these.
You would be amazed. I had, sorry to interrupt you, because
it's okay.
When I was in, where was it? Chicago, Autism 1, because we had a lot of success with autistic kids. So at that time, and so one woman came to me and said, well, I'm Dr. So-and-so, I've been working in Monsanto, and said, what? Yes, well, I'm sorry, but, and so I have an autistic kid. And so she got help from me, and on the other hand, she showed me some things and said, well, glyphosate, you can oxidize with the same stuff. I said, what? So I have the documents of them. She sent me some documents. Yes, you can chlorine dioxide or even ozone too, both oxidize glyphosate. You can get that. And this was one of the big breakthroughs in autism too, because these kids have tons of glyphosate in the belly. This is the gut is totally destroyed from it.
Well, that's fascinating. We got to talk about that more, but even in our mass spec instrument, we know that one of the things that is called the collision cell, and you apply voltage and it fragments the molecule, and then your instrument quantitates the fragment ions. In this case, one of them from glyphosate has a mass of 63, for example, one of the fragments. So we know we can fragment it with only, I think, about 14 volts is all it takes in the instrument, in an ion stream, a very delicate ion stream. We can fragment it. So I kept thinking, why can't we come up with a way to break apart, the phosphate group off glyphosate in blood or in water, some way to destroy it in the water supply before it creates toxicity in people. Probably there is a way to do that. You just mentioned maybe chlorine dioxide is an effective way to do that. I mean, it is a disinfectant that's used in water purification, is it not?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it need to be done more research on that, I have to tell you.
Yes.
Because I have the documentation, they found it out how to get rid of it, and we had, let's say we had results, but to have results is one thing, and to know why is a very different one. The results you can have in one day, but to know why you need a lot of years.
This is true, but I want our users to understand that complex molecules like glyphosate, for example, once you if you just cut it in half, You know, you find a weak point of the ionic bonding and you fragment it, that thing is no longer toxic like glyphosate. It's no longer glyphosate. It doesn't function that way. It breaks down into eventually harmless things like ammonia, you know. So yeah, a lot of the pesticides, herbicides, and so on, they can be broken apart. I bet you there's a lot that chlorine dioxide can do with pesticides.
Mm. Yeah, well, actually, we can reduce pesticides a lot because we used it in plants. I've been in the University of Puerto Rico and I don't know how long ago, and they were very nice people there, and so I spoke with them, and they used it for virus in plants, you know, in the citric plants. And at the beginning, they were spraying it. I said, no, it will not work like that. You have to get it to the roots. How do we do that? This was one. Later, we had other tests not with them, but with others. So we make a hole in the tree. You put the chlorine dioxide in. You put wax on, and the tree that had a lot of mold or fungus and that well recovered totally. So there is something. It is not just a substance. It's a new technology. It is like speaking about a car with gas or electric car. You know, it will be. Yes, it will be not nice for the vaccine industry, obviously, because it makes it, you don't need it. You just don't need it. Or even you can make it as a vaccine, you know, because it is, in a way. But the interesting thing is it has so many possibilities where everybody will benefit, because we need the pharmaceutical industry. They have many products that are really good, but we have to be sure that we get the best and we don't need the poisons anymore that are so heavily harming the bodies on a long term.
So talk about the attacks on chlorine dioxide, the extreme censorship. I mean, obviously our audience is pretty advanced. They already know that this is a natural substance. It cannot be patented.
Well, the audience that know, they know. But let's start for the ones that don't know and say, how is it possible that nobody knows about that? Because in the beginning, if somebody would tell me that a substance is heavily erased, well, try to upload something saying anything in the video, upload your own video and say something beautiful about chlorine dioxide and CDS, and you will see it will last very short because it is erased. This is the first fact.
You'll be banned. Yep.
The second fact is that you say, okay, where are the deaf people of this substance? And you can, as a professional, you could go into the mesh, or you can go into PubMed, where every single case has to be there. If there's a doctor that any time had a death certificate with somebody of oral chlorine dioxide, it would be there, and there's none. So none, not even one. And it is it's in the public too. For example, if the EPA documents that make it to use for drinking water, actually we drink chlorine dioxide every day, but in very little amounts, 5 ppm, not 50, let's say. And so actually this substance is used in many industrial products if we need it, you know, from the poultry to blood bags, you know, it's used in many things.
Isn't it also, it really in many ways mimics the function of the immune system itself? I mean, the immune system kills pathogens with oxygen as
not really part of the immune system uses actually bleach, hypochlorite, you know. For example, if you have the NKT, the natural killer cells, they go around, and I have a nice video on that on too. They go around the cell, and you can see it's a thermo video, and so it heats up, and this is the oxidation process that denaturates the bad bugs, let's say, to all the ones any case. And nature uses oxidation for millions of years to get rid of any kind of invader, and this is how our body works. What happens if you give that stuff to the body? We have more energy. So as a biophysicist, for me, if I have to define illness, I define it as lack of energy. That's the equation. So I don't care about what's the exact case. I only have cations and anions. There's nothing else. So if you have a lack of energy, your pH goes down. You get acid. You know, you have an excess of protons. And if you have an excess of protons with this substance, you can balance it again. And being in balance means having back energy. And having this energy, the body is in charge of you. Nobody else heals you than your own body. Your body is the master, and he knows what to do. And you just give him the right tool, that is oxygen on one hand, and the chlorine ion that is making exactly the same. So the oxidation process is much faster than NKT, because the NKT has a mechanical movement, and now it comes. How much molecules do we have if we drink a glass of, let's say, chlorine dioxide standard? I calculated it, and I calculated it again, and I calculated it a third time, and I said, I'm really a very bad chemist because I couldn't believe the numbers. So I went to a friend of mine, a professor of electrochemics at the University of Alicante, and said, can you help me out with that? And said, oh, no problem, this is easy. Okay, but look at my numbers, I don't know. So she calculated it and came back to me and said, oh, Andreas, it's 433 million molecules for each red blood cell.
Well, that's because...
And that's what I said, wait a minute. So I was right? Yes, of course you were right. I said, no. Yes, this was 10 years ago because we did not know anything. We just know it heals. So after that, I said, how can I prove it? Because one thing is the calculation, the theory, and then the practice. And what we later did and say, we came up, and thanks to other people that helped me, they say, so we start to make, okay, if it's a gas, we can measure it. So what we do is blood gas analytics, and we have tons of blood gas, of every kind. And you see the statistics and see, oh, wait a moment, we have till 50% more oxygen. So the calculation is absolutely true. And the speed of a molecule that is only, and now it comes, 67 mole. It's so tiny. It's very tiny.
Did you say 67 molar?
Yeah.
That's the molarity of the solution that you're putting in?
The molarity is 67, so it goes anywhere. So
wow. So, well, let me just help translate some of this for our viewers. So, what a lot of people forget is the relative sizes of molecules compared to cells. So, chlorine dioxide is a very, very tiny molecule, and by the way, Avogadro's number is a very big number, right? So, and red blood cells are huge. They're huge compared to a molecule of chlorine dioxide. There's no comparison. So what you're saying, it's flooding. It's hundreds of millions of molecules of chlorine dioxide for every red blood cell.
Exactly.
It makes sense.
33 million.
Well, 67 molarity sounds like crazy high to me, actually. I mean, it's incredibly high, because when I'm working with solutions in the lab, we'll work with solutions for liquid chromatography of like 0.25 molarity or 250 millimolars. You know what I mean? 67 molarity, I normally don't see that.
I don't know if now it's right. I speak it right. 67 or 0.67. I don't know if I'm right on that. It's 6.
Well, it could be, given that the molecule is so small. It could be. It absolutely, like, for example, if you were to try to take the molarity of soluble hydrogen in water, that would be off the charts, right? It's just so small.
Yeah, it's really very, very small. So I don't want to get locked on these number exactly.
I understand.
I have to check. I know it's extremely small. With 67, I don't know, a millimole. I think it's millimole. I'm wrong in the translation, maybe. Sorry, but I have to check it.
Okay.
We all just know it's extremely small. It goes to any membrane. It goes to any membrane in the body. It goes to the interstitial fluids, and this is why, for example, when you have arthritis, where the synovial liquid is, you have all the kinds of membranes and fascias and so on, so they don't have a lot of blood there. There's no blood. But the chlorine dioxide can go there and do the work of getting rid of pathogens, viruses or whatever, and later it gets rid of the acidity that is really harming all the cartilage. Sorry,
It's all right.
the cartilage, and so it's very logic. It's an extremely logic substance, and
How does chlorine dioxide therapy compare to, let's say, ozonated water, or some people drink small concentrations of hydrogen peroxide, for example, and that's, I think, widely touted as a treatment for cancer. All of these involve, I think, pushing excess oxygen into the blood. So give us a comparison, if you would.
So, for example, if you have an ozone therapy, ozone only gives 2 electrons. Chlorine hydroxide can give till 5. So, you have a higher electron charge. Ozone has a higher voltage by 2.07, if I'm right, and chlorine dioxide is 0.95. Okay, you have to calculate it to the heat. It's not correct. It's a standard measure on 20 degrees. But it's a difference, a big difference. So you have the ozone needs a carrier. It means it needs a red blood cell as a carrier. You cannot put ozone just into the blood. It would be toxic in that way. So you have to take out the blood, mix the blood with the ozone. The blood shines. The color changes immediately. It's a beautiful red color. You put the blood in back. So the blood is enriched. So the red blood cell is enriched by ozone, but not so much the plasma. So the chlorine dioxide don't need the red blood cell because it has its own carrier. This is the basics. With hydrogen peroxide, our own body produces hydrogen peroxide. We know that. And for example, if you have a high dose vitamin C, it is not an antioxidant. It's actually an oxidant because the Fenton process release the body as an aggression, as a result to this aggression of high acidity. And then you get actually oxidizing effect when you have 10, 15, 20 grams of vitamin C. So it's a similar mode of action, you know? But what the hydrogen peroxide has, it has hydrogen molecules. It makes it highly reactive, and then you have OH groups, and it only has 2 electrons too. So there are the little cousins, let's say. You have the little cousin is hydrogen peroxide, the brother is maybe the ozone, and the real deal is a chlorine dioxide.
I see. So chlorine dioxide has much greater
same like hyperbaric chamber. You know, hyperbaric chamber is another thing. You can make oxygen till 1.7 or whatever. You can really push it into. Yes, you get oxygen with it, but you will. It's similar. It's very similar. But we always need the oxygen carrier, and that's the problem. Yes. So you have something you don't need the oxygen carrier, and it gets everywhere. So the blood-brain barrier is just like a huge door of a boat.
But like you said, it's good to dose this out in small doses over a long period of time, because otherwise your body will naturally simply eliminate or use up that oxygen.
Yes, the main problem of chlorine dioxide is the main advantage. It gets used up.
Yes, the uptake is very rapid.
There are some people. Also, the classic method of more is better. It's not right. More often is better. So it is. If you say I drink 1 liter in 1 hour, it brings nothing. But if you make half a liter in 24 hours, it can be more effective.
I see. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I have so many things to ask you, but I know our viewers want to get to the clinical trials that took place in Ecuador that you recently spoke about, even though it was relatively, what was it, a little over 100 patients in that trial?
Right.
But it seemed to show really extraordinary success, although more research is needed to confirm. But tell us about
I have
those
to say,
trials.
this once with over 100 people, this was a preliminary trial. So I was in November, December, I was in Ecuador giving seminars to doctors. And one of the doctors was in my seminar. He was from an association of doctors, and he was very interested in what I'm doing. And there I show how to work for professionals in a correct way. So it got to January, February, and they say, hey, we have here this problem because it's Guayaquil. He was from Guayaquil, where it's actually the ground zero of we call it ground zero of the coronavirus. We have more than 10,000 dead people there. What the forensic doctor told me, he's a friend of him, so I don't think he will lie to us. So it is, and the military told me the same. So he was there in the moment, and his colleagues got ill, and so they say, I will try it on my colleagues, and they tried it first orally, and it worked, and said, hey, it works great. I said, yes, it's logic why it works. But the director of the IMEMI, he was really in a very bad shape. So the ferritin was over 1,000, the DMERO was over 500. He was really, really in a bad shape, and they had no breathers, so no ventilators for him, because it's a bit outside. So they didn't know what to do. So he called me back and said, how can I make the intravenous stuff? I said, well, remember how I showed you? Do you think it will work? They were very frightened at the beginning because they don't know to put something intravenous or say, hey, wait a moment. And said, no, it's not a big deal. We made it here hundreds of times in the lab with voluntaries. It's even we had proved it on cattle in a 10 times higher dose by mistake, and nothing happened. This was amazing, And so he put it into the doctor and the director of this group. He was in a bad shape. In the video, you can see the photo. Actually, this is the director. And 2 days later, the director was okay.
Wow.
And
well,
it was
that must
immediately.
Have been...
So the people can. I have a lot of stuff I will give you, and when I can, because in the moment I have a lot of documentation, video documentation that proves it. But I need to have the permission from the doctors that give it to me from their intensive care units. This is not so easy because the doctor is working with a substance that's not yet authorized. So, but I appreciate the doctors, because this is a true doctor who says, hey, wait a moment, I will not let die my patients because of regulatory affairs.
Well, and specifically to COVID-19, what many ICU doctors, even in New York City, have discovered is that it's really a disease of hypoxia. Patients are dying from lack of oxygen. There's blood coagulation and clotting. Hemoglobin is dysfunctional in many cases. Lung tissue is, this is not an acute respiratory disease syndrome, ARDS, as is typically called. This is really a blood chemistry issue more than anything else. And it seems like there's no better substance to treat this immediately, within seconds, than chlorine dioxide. Right.
So we had cases where the people came to the hospital and they needed to be intubated or go, because they had a saturation of 50%, totally cyanotic. Not one, I've many of them. And they are like really in a bad shape, and the doctors give it to them. And a few hours later, you can see them sitting in the chair, still weak, obviously, but they can sit and they can speak. And the doctors with the phone is asking the people, saying, "Oh, I'm much better now, unbelievable." So I'm now collecting all that stuff. I will make a video, and I will ask for permission in the future to be able to show it to the people, because people should see that how the change is amazing. So the doctors are waking up, and last week I said we make a Zoom call for the doctors of Ecuador, and it was, well, the maximum was 1,000 people, and it was full. There were more, because they already use it, and the doctor said it's amazing. So this Saturday we have another meeting because of this COMUSAF group, it's called, and they will share in the group all their experiences. You wouldn't believe it. It's amazing. And the interesting thing is, when they came up and said, well, I had a patient, 71 years, diabetic, and really with no saturation, he was in a shape. I said, he will not survive till tomorrow. And so in the end, we put it in the veins. After a few days, he was okay. And the interesting thing is, when they measure then the diabetes, they have to reduce the metformin to 50%. Because I never had such good blood values.
Right. What's really fascinating to me about this is that the real revolutions in natural medicine and natural cures will almost certainly come from outside the United States and Western Europe. Ecuador in particular, I used to live there, so I know that there's actually an open-mindedness among the people of Ecuador to explore all kinds of alternative medicines or complementary medicines or even botanical medicines. A lot of people still grow medicine there. They grow food. It's actually a more self-reliant population than what we have in Western Europe and America.
You're totally right. For example, if you don't have chlorine dioxide, you can use Artemisia annua.
Right.
It's a plant. It works, artemisinin, it works great on that stuff too, because it has an oxygen ring even. For example, the 1,2,3, it's a very interesting chemical compound, and it works.
And that treats malaria as well. But in the United States then, and in the UK in particular, we have these big pharma-dominated political institutions where, frankly, I think they don't care how many people die as long as they maintain their monopolies. So in the United States, we've had 100,000 plus deaths from COVID-19. I think our audience needs to understand that is the cost of censorship of natural medicine. 100,000 people are dead because Big Pharma wants to make money. That is a simple, horrifying truth that people need to come to grips with. Because I don't.
Not only this, actually, we saw it, and the doctors are giving me the feedback and say, when we put the antibiotics, that's officially antibiotics, the atromycin, from the WHO, people get much worse. So they die. So, for example, the hydrochloroquine is one thing, and later put the other stuff to it, makes it worse. So it really, if you just take the hydrochloroquine, it's much more effective than with the antibiotics. Because if you have a virus, the antibiotics is completely bogus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also noticed that
actually they fooled Trump with that, because Trump had the knowledge and you want to push it through, but they want to push it through. And I wonder sometimes, because when Donald Trump made the question, because actually it was a question, and he was looking at them and say, what if we would put what is here?
He said a disinfectant.
The blood. So I wonder if Fauci and company, they didn't use it, because if I make a virus in Wuhan paying 3.7 million, I want to have the antidote first.
Right.
So if he might know that they are taking it, it would make sense.
And Trump, his question was not well formed, and he could have described it in many different ways, including killing pathogens with oxygen, for example, or other variations. But the thing is that we now have a science and medical establishment that is not open to new ideas, that simply has an emotional response against the mention of chlorine dioxide. Instead of saying, here's a molecule, let's test it, let's run some trials, they declare war on the molecule. And it reminds me actually of climate change, where they declare war on carbon dioxide. Think about it, it's kind of a similar thing, right? Carbon and two oxygens, and they say that this is a poison that's killing the planet, when it's actually the most important molecule for photosynthesis and food crops, food production, and even ocean life. Marine ecosystems depend on carbon dioxide. We would all be dead without carbon dioxide, okay? And it's lacking. It's only 400 parts per million in the atmosphere. That's dangerously low.
Another point, it's heavier than air. It goes to the ground. You understand? So it goes to the ground, and actually the ground absorbs the carbon dioxide for the plants, and this is perfectly what it should be.
Well, exactly. But you see, when we have a science establishment that declares war on natural molecules, says that molecule is bad, it's almost like they are table of elements denialists. Like they actually describe it as a war on carbon.
The problem is science has become a religion.
Yes.
And the Bible of the science religion is called references. Right. Yes, it's totally like that. For example, Galileo had as a reference hundreds of people that say the Earth is flat.
Right.
And when Galileo asked, "Where's the reference?" they said, "It's in the Bible." In the way. It's not. I'm not speaking against the Bible. Don't get me wrong. It is just the people that were referencing something. So yes, referencing is a nice thing. I don't say it's not, but, and now it comes, the evidence is over the reference. So if you have 100 people cured that would not have been cured because they had COVID, so there's an evidence. If you have 10 references that say, oh, it cannot work, and you ask, where's the clinical trial that it can't work? Oh, there's none. So it's just a reference of a hypothesis. And hypothesis is actually the less scientific ever thought, because the hypothesis is a belief system. It has nothing to do with science.
Yes.
Even if you have a scientific paper and in the last part it calls conclusion, this is a belief. It's not science.
Look, if you took all the papers and evidence of chlorine dioxide's effectiveness, and you created a document that said this is a big pharma FDA-approved drug called chlorodoxidine or something, and it's going to make a fortune, and you handed that to doctors, they would be amazed. They would say, "Oh my gosh, this is the answer. We have to prescribe chlorodoxidine." But the minute
they did it already. Dr. Kühn Heidelberg in the 80s. So he put together a chlorine dioxide matrix, it's called. So he put some other thing in just to make it patentable in a way, as he would. And so it's for a company called Oxo. It's much weaker actually, because he put other stuff in that makes it weaker. I don't know why, but it's a fact. And it still was successful, that place, but he never get through. So we have in America, we have Frontier Pharmaceuticals. Frontier Pharmaceuticals, this is Howard Ellinger, who was one of the people that were in the beginning of the EPA. So when the EPA makes his basic study about chlorine dioxide for the drinking water, that's like that. And he was working in these papers too. He found out now, 40 years later, because obviously he read my book, and he made some tests that works on cancer, and he made a patent out of it. Okay.
Wow.
So the Chinese, the same, they read the book, so they made a patent out of it. You have a patent for Alzheimer, that's a patent from 2012 from a big pharmaceutical company, but they don't release nothing. Why? Because sometimes you get money for putting a patent in a box and never open it again, like
that's right.
Tesla patents, you know.
Let's get to some practical things here, because we're coming up on the hour. Number one, give us your website and how people can follow you, and then also, how can people make their own chlorine dioxide using that advanced method that you showed with the gas transfer into the water?
My website is andreaskalker.com. It's Andreas, K-A-L-C-K-E-R. Andreas, K-A-L-C-K-E-R.com. This is my personal website. And in the website, we have a link to the mega forum. This is forbiddenhealth.com if you want to go. And there's tons of information, giga of information, where you can really learn everything. Because many people ask me how many drops for this and that. I cannot give the answer. If you get 20,000 emails like that, I'm sorry. Go to the forum. It's everything there. And the interesting thing is we have videos that are totally for free with the videos. And if you want, people say, okay, I want even more. There's even a course, online course. My the assistant I had in the laboratory, when he went away, said, Andreas, can I make a course for beginners? I said, do it. So there's a course on my website too. So it's very cheap too. And the people get help. So if they have a question, they can ask directly, because he is the one in the course. He's very smart. He can give you all the answers for the beginners. I don't want nobody to make a mistake. Actually, I would love that only doctors would have it, but in the case that the industry doesn't want to accept it, so we have to go an alternative way in the beginning, and everybody has the freedom to use what he wants as long as he has the knowledge. So I give the knowledge with love.
And those resources you mentioned, that shows people how to make it. They're step by step.
Okay. From the start, how to make it, it shows how to make it with videos, with graphics, with everything. What you have to see, what's a danger, what are the possibilities, where you have to take care, what illness needs what treatment, because we have protocols from A to Z. So A, the amateur, B, the basic, C, the CDS, D, dermatologic, E, enema, F, the frequent or fever, and so on, and G, the gas. So even the letters are related. So with these protocols, that you can apply them all mixed, because, for example, if you have a prostate problem, yes, you can drink it, but the problem is to get used up. And if you have other problems in your body, you need to make an enema to be more on a located place, because it always works if you get it to the point where it is. It works.
Okay.
But the problem is maybe it gets used up before.
Right, understood. What about, are there any big, obvious contraindications, or people taking specific prescription drugs?
Yes, the only thing we have no real contraindication, but the only thing let's say I would take care of if you have blood thinners, because blood thinners are very heavy poisons. For example, warfarin, coumadin, this is a heavy poison. Actually, people don't know. People say, oh, this is bleach, but warfarin, you know what it is.
Rat poison.
It's exactly the same stuff. So if you don't have warfarin, take the rat poison from the barn,
That's crazy. Yeah, I know. People bleed internally to death.
So I would say there's two different things. So the warfarin is a blood thinner, but it makes the possibility to break the arteries and break it. Chlorine dioxide does not. So the blood gets better immediately, and if you have blood thinners, it can be too much. So you have to control it. This is the only thing. We had no problems with chemotherapy, no problems with any other medicament at all till now, if you have it 1 hour late, because in 1 hour the gas is absorbed. It's so fast, it's like vroom. And it's not works like in typical medicine with key lock function. There is no receptor for chlorine dioxide. Every cell is a receptor for chlorine dioxide because it's oxygen that's free.
And you mentioned chemotherapy. Isn't it amazing how people, they're so brainwashed by Western medicine and Western media that they will say, well, I don't know about this chlorine dioxide, but they'll say, I'm going to take chemotherapy, and their hair falls out, and they vomit, and they lose muscle mass, and their kidney function is destroyed, and their heart doesn't work, and they have brain problems. But they'll say, that's good medicine. That's safe. That's FDA approved. And you're like, no, you are dying. You're committing suicide with that stuff. Why do you think that's safe? And then they'll say, well, I don't know about, vitamin C or something like that. My doctor doesn't recommend that. People are insane when it comes to medicine.
It's programming. We have to understand we from childhood are heavily programmed. And when you from childhood were taken to the doctor and said, no, this is a doctor, you have to take care what he says is real. So you believe it. It's part of their belief system. And it is very, very difficult for people to accept that they might be cheated for 30 years. Understand?
Yeah,
so everybody needs something to believe in or on or whatever. And so this is a belief system. The problem is that the doctors have their own belief system, doctrine. This is why they're doctors in a way.
Yes.
So what happens? You have the young doctors that go to the university, they get from Pfizer the nice suit with the Pfizer label on, oh, I'm in the group, whatever. So, and they don't realize that they're used, that they're fooled, because they're part of a big machinery where in the future they have a computer, and in the computer they put in the data, and the computer says you have to give them that stuff. And you see people dying and dying and dying and dying, and in the end, he goes to the pharmacy and says, well, but they're all dying. Oh, that's normal. And there you have a lot of frustration, and all the old doctors, they know, of course. Most of the old doctors, I don't have to explain anything. They don't tell me. And they know the business around all that. So it's a very sad story.
Yes, it is. Yes. Humanity has been tortured, killed, enslaved by Western medicine for over 100 years. And it's going to continue until someone stops it. And we realize that natural medicine is almost free, it's readily available, it's easy to make, and frankly, we're surrounded by it in terms of botanicals and plants and even oxygen in the air and so on. Almost everything around us is medicine, and yet people think they have to go to a pharmacy drive-through to get their toxins that cause liver damage, but they've got another drug for the liver.
Fear programmed. You have to. The problem is this: you have to step out of a fear program. Because imagine you're a little kid and don't do this because, don't do that, don't do this, careful, careful, careful. I know, for example, how many times a little kid till 10 years hear the word take care or be careful, you know? And this take care or be careful, just by saying these two words, the parents are programming it without wanting. So when he comes bigger, all this stuff, that everything he does has a consequence. Of course it has, but it goes so deep in that the people really get scared, and the scaredness is what makes you a slave. So who is scared is a slave, and who makes scare is the owner.
Well, you're exactly right, and look, we got to wrap this up, but it's been a fascinating talk already. I can tell we need to talk more frequently. We have a lot to explore.
Yes, great. I love it. I love it.
I really appreciate who you are, your curiosity, your advocacy, your willingness to maintain courage in the face of extreme censorship, and you and I are much alike in the sense that we are, attacked and censored. I know, but it's a club of I think people who change human history. Frankly, you're one of those people, and your knowledge needs to be shared widely. And I think there's a revolution right now happening around the world. People, there's an awakening.
It's your knowledge too. I would say, don't say my knowledge, I would say our knowledge. Our knowledge. Our knowledge of the ones that are able to break out of this chain of fear, of this box of fear, where they say, hey, wait a moment, there's not, you will die anyway. So if people remember you as somebody who has done something for humanity, I don't think there's something more worthy. So this is basically what it is.
And you know what, finally, what's really amazing is all of this knowledge is already encoded in Mother Nature, and the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry, the table of elements, the cosmos. This knowledge, I mean, you and I are just vessels of little snippets of wisdom that is contained in the cosmos that has been suppressed. So, the doctors who oppose this human knowledge, they oppose the laws of the universe.
Yeah, but we have to understand why they oppose. It's why does a doctor oppose to this? Yes, because we have something that's called belief system. And you say a belief can move mountains. Yes, it's right, but it can build mountains too.
Right.
Yep. It can build walls, mountains that really somebody who is in a belief system and said, I learned it like this, it has to be. This is a narrow-minded. It's like a donkey with I don't know what's the name for it. With
blinders.
Blinders. He cannot see because his own fear belief system, this combination, makes him unable to even think about that it might be something.
That's right.
I see that, and actually we see now in Ecuador where the doctors are waking up in masses enormously. So. They are baffled. They're baffled. You have the ones that say, wow, what's going on there? And then you have the other ones who said, it can't be. And then the doctor said, but look at all the people we have healed here. No, it can't be.
That's right. It's a belief system. And that's, by the way, that's why their reactions are so emotional, not rational. They attack chlorine dioxide with a fanaticism. It's like religious fanaticism. Not reason, rationality, logic, evidence, nothing. It's fanaticism.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people that are in this mood have no chance, actually. I understand the detractors of mine, 13 years of fighting of every possible way. You won't believe it. 13 years of harassment. But in the moment I started to understand them, and that's what I actually do. I understand that they have a belief system that is based on a fear box, and on top of it, the cream of ego, the ego box,
right. Right.
Don't even try. I will not. I learned then to say, okay, I give the knowledge to everyone who wants to listen. The ones that don't want to listen, that's not my problem. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. We all ultimately come to that conclusion. Maybe I'll make some T-shirts that say "Oxygenate or die." Something like that. We're going to be rolling out some new T-shirts soon. I think that'll be a good one. Oxygenate or die. In any case, Andreas, it's been a pleasure talking with you. We'll talk again. Stay safe and keep doing what you're doing, man. Okay, so the same to you. And if you come to beautiful Switzerland, we are living here in Heideland, you know, like the stories. Imagine the mountains, the cows. It's like it's not cinema. It's real. So the cows really have big bells. It's a beautiful area. So feel free to visit me here, and anytime you're coming here. Well, I appreciate the invite. I'm not flying anywhere, but here in Texas we have cows too, and they have big horns. So I've got plenty of bighorn, longhorn cattle all over Texas, and they are fun to watch as well. But thank you, Andreas. Stay safe until we talk next time. Appreciate you joining us here on Brighteon Conversations. Thank you very much, Mike. It's just been a pleasure for me. Great show. Thank you. All right, that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you for watching. Of course, if you try to share this video, you're welcome to try, but you will be censored and banned everywhere for doing so. That's why it's good to share this on Brighteon.com. You can embed this video into any web page, a blog or other website, and then share that page with people. That's how we can bypass the Facebook censorship and get this knowledge out there, because this knowledge can help save lives by simply adhering to the rules of Mother Nature and the laws of physics and the universe. We don't have to do anything different than just respect what Mother Nature has already created and what God has created for all of us, to this universe, to inhabit. Thank you for watching. This is Mike Adams here, the Health Ranger. Take care. This video was made possible by Brighteon.com. After being deplatformed by YouTube, I built Brighteon.com so that we can speak. All voices of dissent are welcome. Join Brighteon.com now, post your videos today, and start building an audience there where you will not be censored. Brighteon.com.